science.
Yeah.
What about the governance issues? And we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but that was kind of the second focus of the IOM report. What changes did you make there?
Well, the sort of the undercurrent of those comments was that you had a chair and its department and a president and its department that had overlapping responsibilities and were dual executives in effect. And my comment on that was there are skill sets within each that you want to have that enable the agency to run properly. So the president is all about the science, everything having to do with the science, running it internally, dealing with the grantees, dealing with the FDA, dealing with the NIH, dealing with our funding partners overseas, of which we have 22 now. We have collaborative funding agreements with either countries or states and countries or the NIH or whatever. All of that stuff is what you would expect a president scientist to have in his or her wheelhouse. So the president should do all that stuff. There's a lot of other stuff that the president scientist wouldn't have in their skill set, and that includes things like figuring out more funding for the operation, government relations, having anything to do with the bond financing that we have as our central funding source, dealing with public communications with what I call the outside world as opposed to the scientific media, all that sort of thing. You wouldn't expect the president to have, much like you wouldn't expect the chair to have all the scientific expertise. So what I've done is I've very carefully delineated the sets of responsibilities that put all of the stuff that the president should be dealing with under his heading and all the stuff the chair should be dealing with under the chair's heading. So as opposed to overlapping responsibilities, there are complementary responsibilities, and when you take them all into account, you now have 100% of hopefully what the skill sets are that are needed for the agency to run in maximum efficiency. So that's what I proposed to do.
Well, and by the, so again, I'll interject. Sorry, I can't help it. That's who I am. These folks are accessible. So I was on the phone last night with Alan Trounsden, who literally just flew back from Australia, jet-lagged, and the topic of our conversation was, what are we going to do as an individual project leader, along with the agency and its scientific leadership, to work with the FDA to find ways that we can potentially fast-track stem cell type therapies into patients? Because part of the reason for existence of the agency is to capture novel technology that will more rapidly bring things to patients, but that don't use older methods that the FDA and others are more accustomed to regulating and working with. And so actually being able to work with the president of the agency and, in this case, his staff, unlike the situation with Washington where, the leaders of these major agencies are relatively inaccessible, they're cabinet officials in some cases, Trounsden and I are on the phone thinking about what are we going to do to get a consensus among caregivers, patients, FDA, the granting agency, and scientists about where should the bar be for moving into patient trials as aggressively as possible. This is terrific. Now, I love Jonathan. There's no way I would have called him with that question.
No. Just like you wouldn't call Alan and ask him, what's the interest rate on our bonds?
Oh, my God, yes. Yeah, right.
What's an interest rate?
I'm not that bad, but my wife does handle the finances. But I think, again, what's missed a little bit is that California, while a very big state, is also a small enough place where we can, as stakeholders, work collaboratively with the scientific leadership of the agency. And make no mistake about it, we're trying to change the ground rules here